Dear friends, welcome at this World Goodwill Meditation webinar. Today we are 26th of June 2024 and my name is Mince van der Velde and I'm speaking to you from Geneva. We are happy to have a special guest today, Wouter van Ginneke. Wouter is a former co-worker of the International Labour Organization, or the ILO, a division of the UN here in Geneva. He is one of the founders of the Global Coalition for Social Protection Floors, as well as a member of the international movement ATD, Fourth World, where ATD stands for All Together in Dignity. We will talk about these NGOs a little bit later. First, we will have an introduction on World Goodwill and this webinar itself, followed by the usual World Goodwill meditation. Thereafter, I will exchange some ideas with Wouter in relation to the coming Summit of the Future, and we will have time for discussion. For the discussion, you can put your questions in the chat, or at the discussion time you can raise your hand and we will give you the floor. I will try to keep my introduction short so that we will have enough time for the meditation and the discussion with Wouter. As most of you know, the Goodwill Meditation Group is a worldwide group of people who link together in thought each week to meditate upon the energy of goodwill. The purpose of the group is to stimulate and increase the use of goodwill in a world that is facing crisis in multiple areas. Its function is to act as a channel through which the energy of goodwill can flow more abundantly from spiritual levels into the hearts and minds of people who are sensitive to these energies. To come together, let us now first sound the mantra of the new group of world servers. May the power of the One Life pour through the group of all true servers. May the love of the One Soul characterize the lives of all who seek to aid the Great Ones. May we fulfill our part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. Allow me a few more words about this Goodwill Meditation Group. The group is composed of people from all walks of life, all faiths and all nationalities. The group as a whole never meets. There is no need, of course, for the work is done on mental levels. Although this webinar is always on the last Wednesday of the month, the members of the group try to synchronize their meditation and work at 12 o'clock noon on Wednesdays and simply link up mentally and work together in meditation wherever they happen to be. The meditation work, however, can be effective whenever and as often as one may choose. It is of course an open door to say that all people of goodwill want to make this world a better place. The question is, how do we contribute to a better world in the best possible way? Does our little contribution as a single person of goodwill make a difference in a world where change for the better doesn't seem to occur on a larger scale? I think both approaches, a local and a global, are not only valid but also necessary. On a local scale, that is to say as an individual within the circle of our family, our community, etc., we can make a difference. We know that energy follows thought, and this lies at the basis of our meditation work. Through, for example, the World Goodwill meditation, we invoke the energy of goodwill, which in its turn has its impact on subtle levels. That doesn't change the outer circumstances in a fortnight, but it does contribute to, for example, the establishment of right human relationships. Many can experience this in their direct environment. In our daily meditation and also in the Goodwill meditation, we will do together in a minute, we use the great invocation. No one can use this invocation or prayer for illumination and for love without causing powerful changes in one's own attitudes. One's own life intention, character and goals will be changed, and one's life will be altered and made spiritually useful. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, is a basic law in nature. The constant turning of the mind to the need for light and the prospect of illumination cannot and will not be ineffectual. We are told that as the meditation work grows and the network spreads all over the earth, the idea of a downpouring of light and goodwill, which is the immediate aspect of love required today among men, can be looked for. Nothing can prevent the appearance of the expected results, for the eternal law holds good. The illumination of man's mind, so that they can see things as they are, can apprehend right motives and the way to bring about right human relations, is now a major need. The motivating power of goodwill is an essential to right action. Given these two, light and love, eventually the idea of right human relations will become the ideal of the masses, and it will be taking form in all national, public and community affairs. The history of humanity has been that of the apprehension and the use of ideas as applied to human living and as expressing forward-moving concepts. Today, the two ideas needed are light upon our way and practical goodwill. On a global scale, despite many outer circumstances, the energy of goodwill is also at play. Looking back at recent history, we can mention the establishing of the United Nations with the Charter of the UN, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Four Freedoms, and so on, of about 75 years ago. More recently, we have the Declaration of the Sustainable Development Goals, or the 2030 Agenda. Even though most nations committed themselves to these goals, the progress to obtaining them is lagging behind on many levels. Let us not forget that it is always an interaction of positive and negative forces that is at play. There are many people and nations of goodwill supporting the positive, constructive forces, but, and this is the reality of today, there are also many people and nations pushing into the other direction. In 2021, a report called Our Common Agenda outlined the UN Secretary General's vision for the future of global cooperation. It calls for inclusive, networked and effective multilateralism to better respond and deliver for the people and planet, and to get the world back on track by turbocharging action on the Sustainable Development Goals. It outlines possible solutions to address the gaps and risks that have emerged since 2015, calling for a Summit of the Future, which will be held on the 22nd and 23rd of September of this year in New York. Here we see goodwill in action on a global scale. We have talked about this Summit of the Future already in our World Goodwill webinar of last November. Let me just remind you that there are 5 big areas of discussion in this summit. First, sustainable development and financing for development. Second, international peace and security. Third, science, technology and innovation and digital cooperation. Fourth, youth and future generations. And fifth, transforming global governance. Moreover, during the preparations, member states have decided that human rights and gender equality will be cross-cutting issues in the summit. The summit is supposed to produce 3 focused documents. First, a pact for the future, where the aforementioned 5 points will be addressed. And then a special declaration on future generations, where challenges and guidelines, especially for the coming generations, will be outlined and addressed. And third, a global digital compact, where, of course, the challenging issues of our modern digital world, including artificial intelligence, are addressed. Do not forget that currently about 1/3 of the world population, that is about 2.6 billion people, still do not have access to internet. Allow me to shed some light on the relationship between the Lucis Trust and the United Nations. As you know, the Lucis Trust is on the roster of the Economic and Social Council of the UN. But what does that mean? It means that we may participate in almost all public meetings at the UN in Geneva, including those of the Economic and Social Council of the UN itself, as well as in New York. But the fact that we are on the roster implies that we may not make statements nor sign statements of other NGOs. Of course, we can exchange ideas and discuss with other NGOs, and it is in this context, it is a great pleasure that today we have our guest Wouter van Ginningen, who is a co-worker of an NGO that has submitted a proposal for the agenda of the Summit of the Future. We will talk about this work and that proposal in more detail just after the meditation. Of course, states are a bit like human beings. They are all different, but the large majority is still quite selfish. States expressing their sole purpose are unfortunately still quite rare. So most states will try to defend the interest of their own country. And yet, the Summit of the Future clearly shows that we are all living on one and the same planet, and whether we like it or not, we are more and more interdependent. At the same time, global crises threaten the prospects of the future of coming generations. Thus, the participants of the Summit of the Future are forced to think in bigger terms and in terms of long-range ideas for the future. With these ideas, I now suggest that we go into our Goodwill meditation. First, link up in thoughts with all with all those people throughout the world who are working with this Goodwill meditation group. Then we reflect upon the fact of relationship. We are all related to our family. To our community. To our nation. To the world of nations. And to the one humanity made up of all races and nations. Then we say the mantra of unification. The souls of all are one, and I am one with them. I seek to love, not hate. I seek to serve and not exact due service. I seek to heal, not hurt. Let pain bring due reward of light and love. Let the soul control the outer form, and life and all events, and bring to light the love that underlies the happenings of the time. Let vision come and insight. Let the future stand revealed. Let inner union demonstrate and outer cleavages be gone. Let love prevail. Let all people love. In the second state, we reflect upon our own and humanity's relationship with all beings who dwell in the higher realms of mind and heart, the spiritual hierarchy of saints, rishis, bodhisattvas, and masters honored by all the world's religions and spiritual groups. Then imagine that we are standing together within the center of the spiritual hierarchy, immersed in the consciousness of the heart of love. For some, this heart of love is known as the Christ. Other faiths have other names for the one at the center, such as Maitreya, the Imam Mahdi, or the Kalki avatar. Maintaining that high point of contact, let our thoughts reach out to include all members of the human family in whom the energy of goodwill is active. Then we use the affirmation: in the center of all love I stand. From that center I, the soul, will outward move. From that center I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the Divine Self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group, and throughout the world. Then we visualize the energy of love flowing from the hierarchy through the men and women of goodwill and into the hearts and minds of all people, infusing them with goodwill and creating loving and harmonious human relationships. Then we meditate on the ways of spreading goodwill, creating right human relationships, and restoring peace on earth. Realize that we are helping build a channel between the spiritual hierarchy and humanity, through which the energy of goodwill may flow, uniting humanity, solving its problems, and healing all cleavages. Linking in thought with men and women of goodwill all over the world, we say the great invocation in its adapted version which will follow. We say it with deliberation and full commitment to its meaning, knowing that we are radiating its potent energies to humanity. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into human minds. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into human hearts. May the coming one return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide all little human wills, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the human race, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you very much for this meditation together. Now it's a pleasure for me to invite Wouter van Ginneken. Wouter, can you unmute and put on your video? There you are.
Yeah, do you see me?
We see you and we hear you loud and clear. Thank you very much for
Yeah.
being with us.
Yeah.
There
Well,
we are.
thanks for everybody to be there. It's for a good purpose. Thank you.
Okay. Well, most of our audience, we live in countries where there is at least some kind of social security. Even there is always room for improvement. But in many countries of the world, there simply is no or very little social security. Although it is a while that slavery has been abandoned, working conditions worldwide are still quite poor, and in certain areas of the world. So perhaps to introduce yourselves a little bit, you can first tell us a little bit what you did with the ILO or the International Labour Organization where you have been working, Wouter.
Yes, well, the ILO is a specialized agency of the UN, and its specialty is it works on all dimensions of work, like employment, social protection, labor rights, and also labor relations. But the special characteristic of ILO is that it is not only governments who are a member, but also trade unions, workers' organizations, and employers' organizations. So each of the workers and the employers have 50% of the voting rights, and the governments have only got 50%. So that is not true for any other kind of UN organization. Well, there are three means of actions. The first is the adoption and supervision of labor standards. That is basically international conventions on all on employment can be, or working conditions, or social security, and recommendations, and the supervision and the implementation of that legislation in countries. The second means of action is that we provide technical cooperation in all these areas, in particular to developing countries. And the third means of action is research, the collection of statistics, and publications. So the interesting thing about the ILO recently has been that it has launched a global coalition for social justice. We just got a new Director General who comes from Togo, and he is actually one of the first who is from a developing country, and he has launched this global coalition. And the interesting thing is that it is not only governments and workers' organizations and employers that are a member of that, but also civil society, other international organizations, and even academic institutions. And one of the aims is to prepare the social summit, the next social summit, which is going to take place probably next year in New York.
Okay, thank you very much. That gives a nice impression of the ILO. The ILO is here in Geneva. That's why I know about it, and of course you know about it because you work there. We have met each other at the UN. That's where we see each other from time to time. And I know you are a co-founder of an NGO called the Global Coalition for Social Protection Floors. Can you tell us a little bit more what that NGO is doing?
Just also to tell you one other thing, I'm a member of one of the triangles of the Goodwill triangles. So I have a meet in London and in New York, and every morning I connect with them.
Okay.
Anyway, about the global coalition, well, we want to promote the implementation and the financing of social protection floors. What are social protection floors? Basically guarantees for people to have income security and to have access to basic health care. This was actually adopted by the ILO in 2012 in the ILO recommendation on social protection floors. And at that time, we were about 30 or 40 NGOs that were supporting this type of thing. But since that time, we now have 130 NGOs and trade union organizations all over the world who support us. And we try to strategically influence international organizations and governments. And what do we actually do? We write policy briefs, for example, such as on targeting social protection, on environmental justice, on financing, and we also organize webinars and side events at major international meetings, such as, for example, the IMF World Bank meetings. And we also help implementing local or national social protection laws, and we have done that, for example, in Uganda, Senegal, Cambodia, and Nepal.
Okay, thank you very much for that. It's quite an international and a global activity, and it is good to see that there are so many other NGOs who are joining your NGO in this work. It's a good example of cooperation on a global scale. The second NGO of which I know you, which I mentioned in the introduction, is the international movement ATD for the World, where, as I said, ATD stands for All Together in Dignity, which I think is a very nice expression. Can you tell us a little bit more about that NGO?
Yeah, well, we try or we do accompany people living in poverty in accessing their human rights, mainly social and economic rights such as employment, social security, healthcare, and education. And we are convinced that the participation of people living in poverty is indispensable for the conception and implementation of policies that, first of all, affect people living in poverty, but also in general for policies that affect society as a whole. And we try to gather people from different backgrounds, and we promote a different lifestyle in order to anticipate, hopefully, on a better world. We have 400 permanent staff members who receive a modest income, let's say, from the movement. Then there is a group of about 1,000 people of what we call allied workers. I am one of them who, without remuneration, help them to undertake their activities. For example, what I do is for them is to represent our movement at the Human Rights Council in Geneva, for example, at the ILO, etc. And we work in about 30 countries all over the world. And then we are convinced that all our actions we try to do with people who actually live in poverty. So we have actually 3 members, people that are permanent members, people living in poverty or who have a difficult life, and the allied workers.
Okay, excellent. Because one of the SDGs is to eradicate poverty, which, well, at a certain time it was on track, but it is nowadays, we all know, it is not on track. So I
No.
think this support of trying to eradicate poverty is really needed.
Yeah, it remains very actual, and also even for the summit of the future, it is the main kind of aim, let's say. Shall
Yes.
I say a bit more about that, maybe?
Yes. I mentioned the summit of the future. Tell us a bit more. What are you aiming at? How did you do that? What is the progress you have made in this whole adventure? I mean, the summit of the future it's a big event which was called for by the Secretary General, and it's not so easy for NGO. Well, we are an NGO, as I told in the introduction. We are not allowed to make any statements, but even for an NGO of yours, I think it is a whole process. So tell us a little bit what you did, how it works, and where we are now.
Yeah, well, in total, about 500 civil society organizations all over the world submitted text proposals for the Pact of the Future. And in our submission, we stressed, of course, the question of social protection and decent work. But we also asked special attention for the question of legal identity. What is legal identity? That people are not registered, let's say, with may not have the nationality, They may not have a birth certificate. They may not be able to prove their identity, and that often excludes them from government services, such as education. For example, kids cannot do their exam if they don't have that proof of legal identity. It may also happen that therefore you cannot access to social protection, which happens in many countries. And so we have, and the amount of people who don't have that is large. And according to the World Bank, it is about 1 billion people in the world. So out of 8 billion. So that is quite a big number. And in addition, there are about 150 million kids all over the world who don't have their birth registration. You see, so we are trying to get that going. That is one of our main aims, for the coming years. Now, we have made submissions on the legal and also the digital identity. Well, first of all, we have done that submission for the Pact for the Future, and for the Global Digital Compact, about which you talked before. We have said, well, and as you mentioned also, 2.6 billion people don't even have access to internet. So how can they access public services if they don't have a computer, because the public services are more and more digitalized? So, but on both these things, we made proposals both for the UN Pact and for the Global Digital Compact, but without success. But where we did make a success was that on social protection, and that was also through the Global Coalition of Social Protection Floors. We were able to get in the first chapter of the Pact of the Future, that is about the SDGs, a very good mention about social protection. And we got that done, not because we had very good relationships with the government of Belgium, who in fact will become one of the coordinators, or is now one of the coordinators of the Social Summit for next year. So you need contact with governments in order to get anything done, because the governments, they say, yeah, it's fine, all this civil society, let them talk, fair enough, but we are the guys who decide. So if you don't get the support of a particular country, forget about it. You see, so that is the name of the game. Yeah.
So that puts into question there was a big conference a while ago about in Nairobi, which was especially for NGOs.
Yes.
And I know you also submitted your proposal to go through that conference, but even that didn't work out. And you are saying that you're not giving up, which I appreciate, and I think many NGOs won't give up. But you do need to use different channels. NGOs itself is not enough. We do need to work together with governments or representatives.
Yeah, the Nairobi conference was a great success for African NGOs. They got together, and I supported two or three people from Nairobi, that also from the ATD Fourth World Group. But it didn't have any impact on the text of the Pact of the Future, nor on the text of the Global Compact, etc., etc. So it was a big show, but no impact on the text. Yeah.
Okay. It's good to have a look into the kitchen of how
Yeah. That is the
those
kitchen.
things are
We have
working.
to work very hard in order to get the support of governments, because civil society, yeah, these people have pie in the sky. We are the realistic governments, so we are the guys who decide. Yeah.
So then, in general, if we are talking about the Summit of the Future, we have been meditating today the World Goodwill seminar. Sorry, the World Goodwill meditation, which I haven't mentioned yet, but which many people who are attending this webinar do know. We also have an initiative which is called the Cycle of Conferences. Just in a few words, the Cycle of Conferences is a project where we try to, through meditation, shed some more light and goodwill energy into those kind of conferences. We know that there are huge conferences, and these will continue to be there, which in a way, whether we want it or not, they do define the global governance. So that is a way for us to try to help, well, direct them in a correct or in a more positive way, to say. But what is your take on the Summit of the Future, looking it from your perspective?
First of all, I think that meditation is a very powerful means in order to get this going. So and also I practice it myself in my morning meditation. So, I certainly think that you're on the right track. You cannot
Okay.
always see what the result is, but keep doing it. That's for sure. Now we live, of course, in a very uncertain geopolitical situation. And member states do realize that we need to do more multilateral collaboration, and that's what the UN is about. But and the fact that the summit is taking place is already an indicator that in principle, member states are really interested in this happening. But do they put the money where their mouth is? You see, this is the whole thing. So, if we look at the actions that are proposed in the Pact of the Future, these are mainly kind of well-known UN activities, let's say, that all whole UN is involved with. And will it make a difference? Well, only if there will be more resources. You already spoke about the fact that the SDGs, the achievement of SDGs is behind. So one of the results of this meeting could be that there is more resources in order to get those achieved, before 2030. There is one relative breakthrough, maybe, and that is something new about the Security Council, because everybody, of course, criticized the Security Council, quite correctly so. But there are new now proposals, and hopefully that gets also now into the Pact of the Future, in order to enlarge the membership from 15, which is now, to 21 or 27. And to make it more representative of the contemporary world. It is still basically based on the after Second World War situation with veto countries such as France, the UK, the US, China, and Russia, which is completely out of sync with the current situation. We should have people like India, we should have people like Brazil, but not for the veto, because vetoes they should be banned altogether. But basically, if they enlarge it, it would also be to the benefit of African countries, and the way they would deal with the vetoes is in order to limit the scope of them. And if there is, and to and the use of vetoes. Now, the fine print of that I cannot completely tell you, but for example, that if one country is involved in a war situation, then that person should not have a veto. That would be for one thing. If that would ever be achieved, we'll have to see. But in any case, there seems to be some movement on the Security Council, which for years many member countries have been complaining about, and you can read it in the press. Why that is so. The Global Digital Compact is written in a more structured and active way, spelling out objectives, commitments, and actions. And it has also more clear, and there are also a number of new activities that are in there. So that may actually make a difference in the future. They have foreseen all sorts of follow-up actions over the next few years. So that may actually have a concrete impact. But for example, it is completely silent on military technology. Which of course is one of the way. Okay, you can say, well, is that possible? Is that desirable? Who knows? But anyway, that is a big thing. Military, we see that is the drones and everything like that. Okay. Anyway, so there are still 3 months between now and the start of the summit. and negotiations will continue up to the end. And we can have an impact by the meditation, such as you do, and by anybody. And if we also know the exact things that we would like to achieve. For example, one can zoom in on the Security Council and say, we really want that to be enlarged. We want African countries to be in there, so that you have also very concrete proposals of what you would like to happen, and zoom in on that. I would think, Of course, read about it, form your opinion. And last and not least, if you can, influence politicians and governments, because they are the guys who decide. So all other people are nice and friendly and all this type of thing, but they are the people who decide. So if you really want to have an impact, you must do it through government. Well, this is what I wanted to say for the time being. And
Okay. Well, thank you very, very much. I think it was quite clear, and it does show us a picture, well, actually, of the world of today. We can criticize a lot. I know often when the UN is receiving its criticism, the response is, well, look, we are actually a place where we can discuss conflicts, but
yeah,
we are not the people who are to solve them. That is up to the governments,
yeah,
with, as you correctly say, governments are not made up, they don't come out of nowhere. They are a reflection of the population they represent.
yeah. We vote for them.
Yes, we do, and we should. So with this, I would like to open up. We have, of course, still a few minutes to open up the discussion with the group. Once again, if you have any ideas which you want to share, please raise your hand and we will give you the floor. If not, I will try to see whether I can see something in the chat, which is not my strongest point. But we see. Let me just see. What is there? There is. Yeah. There are a couple of comments, but they are quite political. I see here one a quote from David Trice: "The work of the men of Goodwill is an educational one. They hold and advocate no miraculous solution of world problems, but they know that the spirit of goodwill, particularly if trained and implemented by knowledge, can produce an atmosphere and an attitude which will make the solving of problems possible." This is a quote from one of the Blue Book's Problems of Humanity, which I think is quite accurate and describes very well what's going on today.
I see one question by CG. Does Wouter have an opinion on basic income programs? Are they
Please,
something the
yes.
wealthy nation could afford and therefore unrealistic for a way to solve a problem of poverty? Even in America, where they have proven to be helpful, they are still opposed by certain groups. Yeah, I can say something about basic
Yes,
income.
please do, please feel free.
Yeah, so basic income is of course one option of social protection for us. So when I spoke about this ILO recommendation then basically basic income is one option. Now, in some people like Guy Standing have done research on India and on other developing countries, and they say that it is possible. Um, uh, the basic income programs, as far as I can see it, can be very expensive. Is only wealthy nations can they afford them? Uh, Maybe yes, maybe no. the problem is that it is not only basic income that you want to provide to the population, but you also want to provide access to healthcare. You want to provide access to education, and you have to make some sort of a balance between all those 3 or 4 issues in order to see what would be the best kind of combination of those policies. But when people, and in particular in poverty, receive basic income grants or social protection grants, in particular in developing countries, and they are regular, it has a terrific impact on the family. So immediately, if it is predictable, the stream, then people start investing in education. They may improve their housing. They may start, an enterprise. So when a regular stream of income comes to a family, that has a terrific, in particular for low-income people in developing countries, has a terrifically high impact. If it is basic income, if it is a social protection floor, I prefer, also the word social protection floor to social safety net, because the World Bank and the IMF, they talk about social safety net. But for me, that is, okay, the economic process has a number of bad effects, and then bang, you go into a safety net. Yeah, my foot, but what are you going to do then? You're there hanging in that safety net, and but a social protection floor is something that you can stand on. It is something that is not dependent on that you get, if you are in trouble. No, it is something you can count on. Whatever comes. It may not have to be high, but you can count on it. And that in many developing countries and also developed countries, that is a very important anchor, let's say, for people to live on to, you see, and to work from.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. It gives a bit broader point of view. We see one hand which is raised by Rosemary Steele. Can you unmute? Can we, Michael, can you help with that?
Rosemary, yeah?
Can you unmute my Rosemary?
Mensa, I've queued her, but it could be the same issue which Wouter had when he joined. If they didn't
Yes,
do a recent update, yeah.
we apologize for that. This is an issue of Zoom. We had it with our guest speaker, the same thing. Zoom is upgrading regularly, and if you do not have the right version of Zoom, unfortunately, it's not
Can you
possible.
hear me?
Oh, yes, we hear you. So you have the
Right.
right version of
Oh,
Zoom.
sorry
Please go
about that.
ahead.
Yes. Firstly, thank you everyone for being there. It's very reassuring to know that all over the world there are those of us who care enough to get together to do this. Thank you. But my big concern about the naming of people with no papers and how this restricts them, has anyone come up with any suggestions as to how that can be rectified so that people aren't enslaved, which is something I'm hearing is happening when bands of people are stolen, especially young people. And when they come over on the boats to England, for example, a lot of them lose all their papers and everything. There is too much attachment to paperwork. And when you talk about the income for everyone, yes, we all need a basic income, but unfortunately, we need an education that teaches us the responsibility we have for being part of what makes the income. Because at the moment we have a very great battle over here with people who can get money but don't necessarily want to work. And those who want to work can't get work because they haven't got paperwork. It's a dichotomy. Has anyone come up with any ideas that gets us out of this mess?
Wouter, what would you say to this?
Well, this is a very big issue. Well, we have the immigration issue, of course, if I understand you correctly. We have, of course, the issue there where, basic income is not the only answer, but you also have to have education. And then the third issue is, well, can people have access to work? Well, for the immigration, let's say, yeah, we see indeed, that people are coming over the Mediterranean in order to come to Italy. We see that people go over try to get into Dover, to get into England. And because, we are rich, and people who are in developing countries are, they want to be part of it. So if immigrants come into the UK or in Europe or other parts of Europe, then of course they need paper, in order to get work. Governments have, the entitlement to say to people, well, you can be part of the local labor market, yes or no. A number of immigrants, if they do get through, they are then in kind of non-covered jobs, let's say, and then they are not covered by Social Security and that type of thing. Yeah, it is. That is we cannot either open all the frontiers. Suppose that we would say, well, tomorrow, England and the whole of Europe, we open up all the frontiers and we let everybody come in. It would be a disaster. It would not work. But not only but we should let people in, I agree. But at the same time, we should be sure that where people come from, Africa or from other countries, that they have a way of finding employment there, you see.
But they're caught up in Tunis, the ones that are trying to come from Africa. The police are not letting them into the town. They're living under tarpaulins with no money to go back to where they came from, even. It's horrendous what is happening at the moment.
It's horrendous. I agree with you, but I don't have the solution. Basically, on the one hand, European countries and other countries are entitled to say, well, we have frontiers. We can let certain people in and others we don't. But this whole summit of the future and the whole question of the sustainable development goals is indeed in order to create a world system where prosperity is there for everybody, so that also migration will be less. But yeah, that is still pie in the sky. It's true that many like to come to Europe because they have Social Security. Well, you see what is happening in the States, where a lot of people from Latin America would like to come in and do come in. It is actually also interesting to know that big countries such as China and India also are very restrictive on immigration. One wouldn't think that, but they are very restrictive on that. So it is an imperfect situation, but it has not a immediate solution.
There's no quick fix. There's no quick fix for these solutions. Thanks very much for bringing this onto the table, Wouter, and thank you very much, Rosemary, for your question and your input. I would just like to conclude with we have been talking about the SDGs, we have been talking about the Summit of the Future. The SDGs are 17 topics, basic topics, and there is not one which is the most important. They are all interconnected, which is a bit the reflection of the conclusion we are getting at in this discussion. It is all a whole system which we have to improve on, and the Summit of the Future is a step in the right direction. I don't think will be the final solution. Unfortunately, consciousness is not a button which you turn and then, we have a global consciousness of the one humanity. We do aim for that, but the way is probably a little bit longer than we all would hope for. But still, that doesn't mean that we should give up. And I appreciate very much, Wouter, what you are doing with your NGO, which you don't give up, you continue your work, even though if your proposal doesn't get into the agenda, we continue our work. And I think, unfortunately, but maybe also fortunately, that is the way the world is. And it is a pleasure, as Rosemary also said, that we do come and have the ability to come together to continue to support this work. So Wouter, thank you very much. All of you who participated in this webinar, thank you very, very much. And
Yeah.
we hope to see you next time.
Okay, thank you for all your
Thank
support.
you very much.
All the best. Yeah. Did it work a bit?